be sure to follow me on Instagram. There you can hang out with me and talk to me directly. Okay, so we're picking up with Batman Superman #2, which, oh my god, I've been dying for this comic to come out because like the first one was so good. It was amazing. I was like, what a way to intro it. Like, what a way to bring this in, like the Shazam who laughs. Now, here's the cool thing, and I think this is actually gonna prove to be one of the most important parts of this particular story arc that Joshua Williamson is writing. Initially, you pick up with Commissioner Gordon, right outside of Gotham City in the Gotham City Police Department armory. So while it is in the GCPD armory, it isn't usually normal for him to like kind of sneak off and meet with somebody outside the city for a particular purpose, right? And the fact that it is the armory means that, of course, it's police property, meaning Commissioner Gordon could go in there and basically dismiss everybody temporarily or find a place to meet in secret and basically talk to this person who really appears to be Catwoman more so than anything else. But he basically talks about the various forms of evidence and all the poisons and all the things that the various villains from Gotham City use that is all basically locked down by Wayne Tech security, right? So this seems to indicate that he's talking about the Batcave or some place basically controlled by Bruce Wayne. We could argue like Arkham Asylum, but it would make sense for Commissioner Gordon to be able to just go into Arkham, but there is also a lot of red tape, right? I mean, Commissioner Gordon isn't really like the warden of Arkham, so he couldn't just walk in there and take what he wants. He would need a warrant in order to be able to access that information. It looks like he's talking to Catwoman because he's basically saying like, not even Commissioner Gordon has access to these things. It's impossible to get past except for this one particular person. And the reason why I say Catwoman is because she's like the greatest thief in all of Gotham City, right? And I would probably say probably the world. I mean, I don't think that DC's really broken down the level of thieves in terms of how they compare to everybody else, but nonetheless, at this point, it transitions to the actual fight between Shazam, Superman, and Batman. And this, I think, is really what you guys came to see. The fight between Shazam, Batman, and Superman. Now, this is the reason why this works so well, is because on the surface, if you're not really knowledgeable about like the weaknesses of Superman, on the surface, you would look at this and just kind of see it boil down to a fight between a Superman-esque character and Superman. But it's far more interesting than that, because remember, Superman has a weakness to magic, and that's one of the things, that's one of the I guess the upper hands that Shazam always sort of had on him. Now, Shazam's not a straight up magic wielder like, you know, like Zatanna or somebody like that, but magic is invoked in the powers that he uses, and so it's kind of cool to see Joshua Williamson sort of tug on that little string and then have him face off against Supes. And so with Batman being part of the fray, it's sort of funny here because it's just sort of like Batman's just a guy in a Halloween costume, right? Like Shazam Who Laughs doesn't really take him seriously, and indeed, there's no reason for him to. And so with that being said, like you basically end up having like the question of Batman of where's this thing being kept? Of course, he's essentially on the hunt for something, and it's a cool scenario because what ends up happening is Superman goes to use his heat vision on Shazam, and then Shazam turns back into Billy Batson. And this is genius here. This is absolutely genius. And here's the reason why. Shazam, I always sort of saw depicted as a young, naive kid who was an answer to the question, what if a teenager had the powers of Superman? That's really how I always saw him. And for the most part, that's really what he was. Like, what if you woke up one day and you had all of Superman's powers, but you had them on command? I want to be Superman now. And you basically got all those powers that the Man of Steel has. What would you do with that? I never saw him as the sharpest tool in the shed. I never saw him as very good at like trickery and deception or anything like that. And mostly because of the fact that the way he's been written over the years isn't really exactly like Superman. It's more so that he has other people who are smarter than him to basically kind of help him and aid him, right? So you got like the Wizard Shazam who can go to for guidance. In more recent years, you have the Shazam family. He even learns lessons from like Black Adam, who's exceedingly old and has a lot of like battle-hardened wisdom to sort of impart on Shazam, albeit by beating the crap out of him. So the fact remains that there are a lot of teachers in the world of Billy Batson, and so I never really saw him as a kid that needs to learn more than how to like defeat this particular foe or to use his brain in some smaller fashion. What he does here is genius because he tricks the heck out of Superman. He's just like, dude, Superman, I'm sorry, man, I don't know what's going on. I get these weird visions and nightmares and things like that. You got to find a way to help me. And then it's just like messing around, got Superman to lower his guard, and then turns back into Shazam again, right? Like, this is genius. And this is one of the coolest things about bringing in characters from the dark multiverse, is it gives us iterations of the characters that we don't normally see. That while Billy Batson is by no means an idiot, he's certainly not like super good at like tricking people and using like espionage and subterfuge to get what it is that he wants. But doing that here is really, really, really smart. Like it's pretty awesome. And so what he ends up doing is basically sort of kind of revealing to Superman a bit of his intention. Now, in reality, it should kind of be taken with a grain of salt. And the reason why I say that is because what he does is basically saying that like, hey, you know, you always considered my existence to be a joke. You guys laugh at me and you guys talk about me behind my back, different things like that. Basically, like, you never really took me seriously. You had me on the team because I'm powerful, but not really because I matter. And the reality is that this is not Billy Batson from the main DC universe. This is Billy Batson from the Dark Multiverse. And so what he's basically doing is bringing all those ideologies from the Dark Multiverse into the main DC universe and then basically putting them onto Superman, right? Like projecting them onto Superman and saying like, how you guys existed in my universe is how you guys exist here, which is not necessarily true. But what it does do is allow him to maintain this fantasy of believing what he wants to believe. And so it's a really cool concept. And it's a really cool idea. It's a great reflection of people in the modern day. And so of course, then you have Batman who just comes flying in with like the Batman Who Laughs Batwing. Because remember, when the Batman Who Laughs came over from the Dark Multiverse, the first thing was being part of Dark Knight's Metal. But following the defeat of Barbados, then it turned into, well, how can I basically bring down this Earth and turn it into like a Dark Multiverse version of itself? And so it wasn't really enough to say, hey, like we're going to start injecting people with toxins. You basically had to have systems in place that could make him comparable to Batman. And with Batman having all these gadgets and things like that, the Batman Who Laughs had to have his own version of those. And so that's why you saw the Batman Who Laughs having things like his own Batwing and so on and so forth. It was a way to just kind of build his presence up and to allow himself to become a legitimate danger to Bruce Wayne. Because at the end of the day, why would Bruce Wayne be worried about himself running around on Earth who doesn't have a Batwing or a Batmobile or a Batboat or a Bat credit card? Like, why would he have to worry about that guy? He's just like, okay, so like, I'll just track him down and then shoot him in the face when he's like running away from me. And that would basically be it. But it's kind of a cool thing because what Batman does is basically roll up on Shazam and then in turn like stab him, right? Now what it does is it allows Shazam to essentially like incapacitate Batman, to send him flying down to the ground while he's unconscious and force Superman into a choice. Do you want to defeat me or do you want to save Batman? Now here's kind of a funny thing, and in reality, I would have defeated Shazam. Like I want to know which one, what would you guys have done? Would you guys have defeated Shazam or would you have saved Batman? Like I'm kind of curious. It's like a video game choice, right? Like what was it? Arkham City, where like you're Catwoman and you have to choose between like taking the money and leaving or like saving Batman. I live streamed that at one point and all you guys, like a bunch of you guys were watching it and I was like, what should I do? You guys were like, let Batman die. You guys are heartless. You're terrible people. Terrible people is what you are. But nonetheless, it's really cool here because I would have defeated Shazam. And the reason why is because Batman, you know, Bruce Wayne is very, very capable. That's true. And really like Dick Grayson and Tim Drake and Damian Wayne and Jason Todd if he chose to, and even Batgirl. Like they're not really a Batman, right? They're not a perfect stand-in, but hey, they're good enough. So I would have been like, all right, you know, hey, sorry Batman, it's been real and it's been good, but it ain't been real good because you're kind of a dick. So like, I'm gonna defeat Shazam. Shazam's got to go, and then like just go to Dick Grayson and say, man, it was terrible, man. Like it was awful. You know, it's you know, it was a tough choice to make, man. But like, you want to be Batman though? Like that's basically how it would go. That's basically how that whole situation would go down. And it's kind of funny because in turn, when Batman wakes up in the Fortress of Solitude, he actually starts chastising Superman and just being like, why didn't you stop Shazam? Why didn't you let me die? And indeed, it would have been the smarter move to make. Now, of course, Superman ends up doing the Superman thing where it's like, well, I looked into his eyes and I saw that it's really Billy Batson. He's just struggling with a few things. And it's like, look, we're not talking about drug addiction, right? Like we're not talking about, you know, Shazam, you know, the Billy Batson got his heart broken by some girl he met in like the 9th grade and like he was never in love before and he couldn't get over it and he was just struggling forever and he decided the best way to do it was become some angsty teenager who's also an evil version of Superman, more or less. But that's not what we're talking about. Like we're talking about a legitimately evil superhero out there who would further the plan of the Batman Who Laughs and turning the entirety of the world upside down. So it's kind of crazy because in doing this and it's sort of taunting of Superman, what Shazam basically revealed to him is that the Batman Who Laughs is working with basically dark multiverse versions of themselves, right? So like the Superman Who Laughs and the Wonder Woman Who Laughs and the Aquaman Who Laughs and different things like that. What it does is it provides them with an end. And this is kind of the benefit of Superman, and it's why he did what he did, right? Because it's kind of like, okay, look, we could defeat Shazam Who Laughs, but at the end of the day, we're treating a symptom. We're not treating the cause. We need to actually treat the cause, right? So let the small fish go to catch the big fish. That's the cool thing that goes on here. And so we're basically, he sits down and analyzes these batarangs that were used by the Batman Who Laughs, and each one is basically encoded to the particular DNA sequence of each member of the Justice League and designed to infect them in a way that will basically allow complete and total control, right? So Superman being weak to kryptonite, the batarang was laced with some form of kryptonite, most likely, in order to basically pierce the body of Superman and then in turn infect him. The question is, where do we go from here? And that's when Batman and Superman form this plan. What they end up doing is basically traveling out, and Batman says like, no one can know what we're doing here. This has to stay secret. Now, this is really the question that I had, is with a scenario like this, like a Shazam Who Laughs running around out there, how does the Justice League not get involved? And it's basically Batman telling Superman, like, no one can know what we're doing. This has to be a secret mission between the two of us. No one can be aware of what's going on. And then he asks the question, are you truly ready for this? And the response of Superman is, one, I always knew that you had the Batman who laughs being held underneath the Hall of Justice because I'm a journalist. Now in reality, it could have also been like, I just used X-ray vision because I was bored one day and I wanted to see if anything needed to be cleaned. And then I just saw that the Batman who laughs is under there. And I was like, what in the heck is going on? Like, I mean, that would have been kind of cool. That would have been pretty interesting too. But nonetheless, Superman figured it out very, very fast. And he basically says, it's the only real option that we have. And so this is what's really cool here, is because suddenly you switch over to the Batman who laughs. And when that happens, like, in comes Superman as the Superman who laughs, and the Batman who laughs greets him as an old friend, which is crazy. Because here's the question I have. Is this actually the Superman, like Superman who's fine and pretending to be the Batman who laughs? Or is it Superman who is like the Superman who laughs, right? Like, is that really what's going on? I imagine it's probably him faking it, but it'd be awesome if it wasn't. This entire time, it was actually the Superman who laughs who was pretending. And like Billy Batson transforming into the normal version of himself is Joshua Williamson's way of telling us that. That would be awesome. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.